The princess never forgot the human who saved her. What she did at the reunion stunned the galaxy. The gleaming spires of Celestial Station Prime stretched endlessly into the void, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck, his weathered hands gripping the metal railing as he watched the diplomatic shuttles arrive. 20 years had passed since he last walked these halls. 20 years since he was just a young security officer aboard a human merchant vessel. The station bustled with activity as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for the Unity Summit. Representatives from the Zephyrian Empire, the Crystalline Collective, and dozens of other species moved through the corridors in their finest ceremonial attire. Jake felt out of place in his simple Earth Defense Force uniform, a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and bioluminescent displays around him. "Captain Morrison?" A melodic voice called from behind him. Jake turned to see a tall, elegant figure approaching. The being had the distinctive blue skin and silver hair of the Zephyrian royal family, but something about her seemed familiar. Her eyes, a deep amber color, held a warmth that made his heart skip a beat. "Yes, that's me," Jake replied, his voice cautious. He had learned long ago that in galactic politics, nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. The female Zephyrian smiled, an expression that seemed to light up the entire corridor. "You probably don't remember me. I was much smaller then, just a frightened child hiding in the cargo bay of your ship." She paused, her amber eyes studying his face. "My name is Princess Zara of the Zephyrian Empire." The memory hit Jake like a plasma bolt. 20 years ago, during a routine cargo run to the Outer Rim, his ship had answered a distress call from a damaged Zephyrian vessel. Among the survivors was a young princess, barely 10 years old, who had been traveling with her diplomatic escort when pirates attacked. Jake had been the one to find her, huddled and terrified in the wreckage. "Princess Zara," Jake breathed, his eyes widening. "You were so small, so scared. I remember giving you my emergency rations and telling you stories about Earth to help you sleep. You saved more than my life that day," Zara said, stepping closer. "You showed me that kindness exists across species, that courage isn't defined by size or strength, but by the willingness to help others when they need it most." Jake felt heat rise to his cheeks. "I was just doing my job. Any human would have done the same." "That's exactly what makes humans special," Zara replied, her voice filled with conviction. "You say any human would have done the same, as if compassion is so natural to your species that it requires no special mention. Do you know how rare that is in the galaxy?" Before Jake could respond, a commotion erupted nearby. Several Zephyrian guards in ornate armor rushed toward them, their expressions urgent. The lead guard, a stern-faced male with ceremonial scars across his cheeks, bowed deeply to Princess Zara. "Your Highness, forgive the interruption, but the Imperial Council requires your immediate presence. The Chronaxi delegation has made unexpected demands regarding the trade agreements." Zara's expression shifted to one of diplomatic concern, but she held up a hand to her guards. "Tell the Council I will be there shortly." She turned back to Jake, her amber eyes intense. "Captain Morrison, would you honor me with your presence at tonight's ceremonial dinner? I believe there are things we need to discuss." Jake nodded, though he wasn't sure what a simple Earth Defense Force captain could offer in galactic politics. "Of course, Your Highness." As the guards escorted Princess Zara away, Jake caught her looking back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. There was gratitude there, certainly, but something else as well. Something that made his pulse quicken and his mind race with possibilities. The observation deck fell quiet again, but Jake's thoughts were anything but peaceful. He had come to this summit as a minor security consultant, expecting to fade into the background while more important beings shaped the future of galactic relations. Now, He found himself at the center of something he didn't understand, connected to a princess who seemed to see something in humanity that even humans themselves took for granted. The grand ballroom of Celestial Station Prime was a marvel of engineering and artistry. The ceiling displayed a living star map, constantly shifting to show the real-time positions of every inhabited system in the galaxy. Delegates from hundreds of worlds mingled beneath the cosmic display, their conversations creating a symphony of languages and dialects. Captain Jake Morrison stood near the entrance, feeling more out of place than ever in his dress uniform. The other attendees wore elaborate ceremonial garments that seemed to defy physics, from the crystalline collective's representatives, whose bodies literally sparkled with internal light, to the gaseous conclave's envoys who maintained their form. Through advanced containment fields, Captain Morrison, Princess Zara's voice cut through the crowd. Jake turned to see her approaching, and his breath caught in his throat. She wore a flowing gown that seemed to be made of captured starlight, shifting between deep blues and brilliant silvers as she moved. Her silver hair was arranged in an intricate pattern that incorporated small, glowing crystals. "Your Highness," Jake said, offering a respectful bow, "you look magnificent." "Thank you," Zara replied, her amber eyes twinkling with amusement. "Though, I must say, I find human formal wear quite striking in its simplicity. There's something powerful about not needing to prove your worth through display." Before Jake could respond, a deep, rumbling voice interrupted them. "Princess Zara, surely. You're not wasting time with this primitive human when there are important matters to discuss." Jake turned to see a massive figure approaching. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall, with dark purple skin marked by intricate tattoos that seemed to move on their own. This was clearly a member of the Chronaxi Empire, the galaxy's most aggressive, expansionist power. "Ambassador Thex," Zara said, her voice cool and diplomatic. "I wasn't aware that choosing my dinner companions required your approval." The Chronaxi ambassador's small eyes fixed on Jake with obvious disdain. "Humans are a curiosity, nothing more. A young species that has yet to prove their worth to the galactic community. They lack the strength of the Chronaxi, the wisdom of the Zephyrians, or the technological advancement of the crystalline collective." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but before he could speak, Princess Zara stepped forward. Her posture remained elegant, but there was steel in her voice when she replied. "Ambassador Thex, your assessment of humanity reveals more about Chronaxi limitations than human ones. 20 years ago, when I was a child lost in the void, it wasn't Chronaxi strength that saved me. It wasn't Zephyrian wisdom or crystalline technology. It was a human who risked his life to answer a distress call, who shared his food with a frightened alien child, who stayed awake for 3 days, straight to make sure I was safe." The ambassador's expression darkened. "A single act of charity hardly defines a species' worth." "You're right," Hera said, her voice carrying across the nearby conversations, causing other delegates to turn and listen. "A single act doesn't define a species. But humans don't commit single acts of kindness. They commit millions of them, every day, without thought of reward or recognition." Jake watched in amazement as Princess Zara continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. She spoke of human colonies that had welcomed refugee populations from war-torn worlds, of human scientists who had shared their medical advances freely with species that had nothing to offer in return, of human explorers who had risked their lives to map dangerous regions of space so that others could travel safely. "The Chronaxi measure worth through conquest," Zara said, her amber eyes blazing. "But humans measure worth through contribution. They ask not what the galaxy can do for them, but what they can do for the galaxy." Ambassador Thex's face had grown darker throughout her speech. "Pretty words, princess, but words don't win wars. Or build empires." "No," Jake said quietly, finding his voice at last. "But they build something better. They build trust, cooperation, and peace. The Chronoxy ambassador laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the ballroom. Peace? Tell me, human, what happens when a species like mine decides your peace is inconvenient? What happens when strength meets your naive idealism? Jake met the ambassador's gaze steadily. Then strength learns that idealism backed by determination is the most powerful force in the universe. The tension in the room was palpable. Other delegates had stopped their conversations entirely, sensing that something significant was happening. Princess Zara stepped closer to Jake, her hand briefly touching his arm in a gesture of support. "Ambassador Thex," she said, her voice carrying the authority of the Zephyrian throne, "I believe this conversation has run its course. Captain Morrison is my honored guest, and I will not tolerate further insults to him or his species." The Chronoxy ambassador's eyes narrowed, but he couldn't afford to openly challenge a Zephyrian princess in front of the entire galactic diplomatic corps. With a grunt of displeasure, he turned and stalked away, his heavy footsteps echoing through the suddenly quiet ballroom dot as conversation slowly resumed around them. Princess Zara turned to Jake with a smile that seemed to contain both pride and something deeper. "Thank you for standing up for humanity," she said softly, "and for reminding me why I've never forgotten the human who saved me." The morning after the ceremonial dinner, Captain Jake Morrison found himself in the most important meeting of his life. The High Council chamber of Celestial Station Prime was a circular room with seats arranged in concentric rings, each representing different levels of galactic authority. At the center sat the Galactic Arbitration Council, 5 beings from the oldest and most respected species in the galaxy. Princess Zara sat in the Zephyrian delegation section, her amber eyes focused intently on the proceedings. Across the chamber, Ambassador Thex and his Chronoxy delegation occupied their seats with the confidence of a species that had never known defeat in battle. "The matter before us today," announced Counselor Vex, an ancient being whose crystalline form pulsed with soft blue light, "concerns the admission of humanity to the Galactic Defense Alliance. The Chronoxy Empire has challenged this admission, claiming that humans lack the strength necessary to contribute meaningfully to galactic security." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He hadn't expected this. The Galactic Defense Alliance was the most prestigious military organization in the galaxy, comprising only the most capable species. Membership would mean access to advanced technologies, protected trade routes, and most importantly, protection from aggressive species like the Chronoxy. Ambassador Thex rose from his seat, his massive form commanding attention. "Honorable counselors, the Chronoxy Empire has observed humanity for several decades. While they show potential, they are still a young species, limited in both technology and military capability. The Defense Alliance requires members who can contribute immediately to galactic security, not species that require protection themselves." "And what would you have us do?" asked Counselor Myra, an ethereal being whose form seemed to shift between dimensions. "Deny membership to a species that has consistently demonstrated peaceful intentions and remarkable ingenuity? We propose a test," Thex replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Let humanity prove their worth through action, not words. A single human representative will face a Chronoxy champion in combat. If the human wins, we will support their admission to the Defense Alliance. If they lose, humanity will accept a subordinate role as a protected species under Chronoxy oversight." The chamber erupted in discussion. Jake felt his blood run cold. A combat challenge from the Chronoxy was essentially a death sentence. Their warriors were genetically enhanced, trained from birth, and equipped with the most advanced personal weapons in the galaxy. "I object to this proposal," Princess Zara said, rising from her seat. "Combat prowess is not the sole measure of a species' worth to the Defense Alliance. Humanity has proven their value through exploration, diplomacy, and innovation. The princess speaks wisdom, agreed Counselor Keth, whose plant-like form swayed gently as he spoke. However, the Chronixy proposal is within their rights under the ancient laws of challenge. If humanity accepts, the combat will be binding upon all parties. Jake stood up, his heart pounding. Counselors, I accept the challenge on behalf of humanity. The chamber fell silent. Princess Zara's eyes widened with a mixture of admiration and terror. Ambassador Thex's expression shifted from smug confidence to genuine surprise. Captain Morrison, Counselor Vex's voice carried across the chamber. You understand the implications of this challenge? Chronixy combat is to the death. Their champion, Warlord Krex, has never been defeated. I understand, Jake replied, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. But I also understand that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when the odds are against you. Ambassador Thex's laughter boomed through the chamber. Admirable courage, human, but courage alone will not save you from Krex's blade. We accept your challenge. The combat will take place in the Arena of Judgment in 3 days' time. As the council session ended, Jake found himself surrounded by well-wishers and curious onlookers. Through the crowd, he saw Princess Zara approaching, her face a mask of controlled emotion. Captain Morrison, she said formally, might I speak with you privately? They moved to a quiet alcove overlooking the station's main docking bay. For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the endless stream of ships arriving and departing. You're going to die, Zara said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe, Jake replied. But if I don't fight, humanity will be enslaved. The Chronaxi don't make empty threats. They'll use our protected status to gradually absorb our worlds, our culture, our freedom. There has to be another way, Zara said, turning to face him. Some diplomatic solution, some alternative that doesn't require you to throw your life away. Jake smiled sadly. Princess, 20 years ago, a little girl was going to die in the cold of space. I could have calculated the risks, weighed the odds, found reasons why someone else should handle the rescue. But sometimes the right thing to do is also the dangerous thing to do. Zara's amber eyes filled with tears. I can't lose you again, not after I just found you. You won't lose me, Jake said, gently touching her hand. Win or lose, what we be. Shared here, what humanity represents, that will continue. That's the real victory. How can you be so calm? Zara asked, her voice breaking slightly. Because I know something Ambassador Thex doesn't, Jake replied, his eyes fixed on the stars beyond the station. He thinks strength is about size, and weapons and genetic enhancement. But human strength comes from something else entirely. It comes from the willingness to stand up for others, even when you're scared. It comes from the refusal to give up, even when everything looks hopeless. Princess. Zara squeezed his hand. Then I'll be there, in the arena, cheering for the human who taught me that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. As they stood together in the alcove, Jake felt a strange peace settle over him. Win or lose, he would face the challenge with the knowledge that he was fighting not just for humanity's place in the galaxy, but for the values that made life worth living. The Arena of Judgment was a massive spherical chamber at the heart of Celestial Station Prime, its walls lined with viewing platforms that could accommodate representatives from every species in the galaxy. As Jake Morrison entered through the competitor's entrance, the roar of the crowd hit him like a physical force. Thousands of beings had gathered to witness what many believed would be humanity's final stand. Jake wore simple combat gear, a lightweight armor vest, basic energy shield, and a standard plasma rifle. It was all that human technology could provide. modest compared to the advanced weaponry available to other species. He had spent the last 3 days in preparation, not training his body, which was already at peak condition, but preparing his mind for what was to come. Across the arena, a massive door began to open, and Warlord Krex emerged. The Chronoxy champion was a terrifying sight, nearly 9 feet tall, his purple skin covered in ritual scars and biomechanical enhancements. His armor was a masterwork of Chronoxy engineering, pulsing with energy fields and bristling with weapons. In his hands, he carried a massive warhammer that crackled with destructive energy. "Beings of the galaxy," announced the arena master, a neutral AI that had overseen such challenges for centuries. "You witness today a combat of species honor. The human Jake Morrison fights for his people's admission to the galactic defense. Alliance. Warlord Krex fights to maintain Chronoxy supremacy. The combat continues until one cannot continue." In the VIP section, Princess Zara sat with the Zephyrian delegation, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Ambassador Thex lounged in the Chronoxy section, his expression one of bored confidence. He had seen Krex fight before. This would be over quickly. "Begin," the arena master announced. Krex charged immediately, his massive form covering the arena floor with surprising speed. His warhammer swung in a deadly arc that would have split Jake in half, but the human wasn't there. Jake had learned something. In his years of military service, sometimes the best strategy is not to fight your enemy's battle, but to make them fight yours. Instead of meeting Krex's charge, Jake dove to the side, rolling behind one of the arena's structural pillars. The Chronoxy warrior's hammer struck the pillar with tremendous force, sending fragments of metal flying. "Stand and fight, coward!" Krex roared, his voice echoing through the arena. Jake emerged from cover, his plasma rifle firing in controlled bursts. The shots struck Krex's armor, causing minor damage but not penetrating the advanced defenses. The Chronoxy champion laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Human weapons are toys." Krex bellowed, launching himself at Jake again. This time, Jake was ready. As Krex's hammer descended, Jake activated his energy shield and caught the blow at it. An angle, redirecting the force rather than absorbing it. The technique was one he had learned from studying Zephyrian martial arts, using an opponent's strength against them. The crowd murmured in surprise. Few had expected the human to survive even the first exchange, let alone demonstrate such tactical awareness. For the next several minutes, the pattern continued. Krex would attack with overwhelming force, and Jake would evade, redirect, or deflect, always staying one step ahead. The Chronoxy warrior was powerful, but his attacks were becoming predictable, his movements slower as his massive frame tired. "You cannot run forever, human." Krex snarled, his breath coming in heavy gasps. "I'm not running," Jake replied, his voice calm and steady. "I'm learning." Princess Zara watched in amazement as Jake continued his defensive strategy. She could see what others in the crowd were missing. Jake wasn't just surviving, he was studying. Every attack, every movement, every tactical decision was being analyzed and cataloged. The turning point came when Krex, frustrated by his inability to land a decisive blow, overextended himself in a massive overhead strike. Jake sidestepped at the last second, and the warhammer struck the arena floor with such force that it became briefly embedded in the metal dock. In that moment of vulnerability, Jake acted, but instead of attacking Krex directly, he fired his plasma rifle at the hammer's energy core. The weapon's power cell overloaded, and the resulting explosion sent Krex flying backward. His armor cracked and smoking. The crowd erupted in shocked cheers. Ambassador Thex's expression had shifted from confidence to concern. This was not how the battle was supposed to go. Krex struggled to his feet, his massive form swaying. Without his primary weapon, He was still dangerous, but the psychological impact of losing his warhammer was evident. For the first time in his life, the Chronaxi champion looked uncertain. "Impossible," Krex muttered, his small eyes fixed on Jake. "Humans are weak, inferior. How?" Jake approached slowly, his weapon lowered but ready. "We're not stronger than you," he said, his voice carrying across the arena. "We're not faster or more advanced, but we are something else." "What?" Krex demanded. "Adaptable," Jake replied. "We learn. We improvise. We never give up." With a roar of rage, Krex charged one final time, his massive fists ready to crush the human who had dared to challenge Chronaxi supremacy. But Jake was ready. He had learned everything he needed to know about his opponent's patterns, weaknesses, and limitations. The final exchange was brief but decisive. Jake used Krex's own momentum against him, a technique that required precise timing and complete understanding of physics and anatomy. When the dust settled, Warlord Krex lay unconscious on the arena floor, and Jake Morrison stood victorious. The arena fell silent for a moment, then erupted in the loudest cheer in its history. Beings from across the galaxy rose to their feet, applauding not just Jake's victory, but what it represented: the triumph of intelligence over brute force, of determination over despair. Princess Zara was the first to reach the arena floor, her elegant composure abandoned as she ran to Jake's side. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You actually did it." "We did it," Jake corrected, pulling her into his arms. "Humanity did it." Ambassador Thex stood in his viewing box, his expression a mixture of shock and grudging. Respect. The impossible had happened. A human had defeated a Chronaxi champion, and the galaxy would never be the same. The aftermath of Jake's victory in the arena of judgment sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. News of the human champion's triumph over Warlord Krex spread across star systems faster than light-speed communication, carried by traders, diplomats, and news networks to every corner of civilized space. For the first time in galactic history, the seemingly invincible Chronaxi had been humbled by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Celestial Station Prime, watching the endless stream of ships arriving to witness humanity's formal admission to the Galactic Defense Alliance. The ceremony was scheduled for the next day, but Jake's mind was elsewhere. His thoughts kept returning to Princess Zara and the impossible situation they found themselves in. "Captain Morrison," a familiar voice called from behind him. Jake turned to see Princess Zara approaching, but she wasn't alone. A contingent of Zephyrian nobles accompanied her, their expressions ranging from curious to disapproving. "Your Highness," Jake said, offering a respectful bow. He noticed the tension in her posture, the way her amber eyes seemed to hold both determination and apprehension. "Captain, I need to speak with you privately," Zara said, her voice carrying the authority of her royal position. "It's a matter of utmost importance." They moved to a private conference room, leaving the Zephyrian nobles waiting outside. Once the door sealed, Zara's composure cracked slightly, revealing the woman beneath the princess. "Jake," she said, using his first name for the first time since their reunion, "there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said days ago." "What is it?" Jake asked, concerned by her obvious distress. "The Zephyrian High Council has been debating my future," Zara began, her hands clasped tightly together. "My father, the Emperor, has been under tremendous pressure to arrange a political marriage. The other noble houses believe that my association with you has gone too far." Jake felt his heart sink. He had known this moment would come, had prepared himself for it, but the reality was still painful. "I understand. You have duties to your people, responsibilities that I can't ask you to abandon." "That's just it," Zara said, stepping closer to him. I don't want to abandon them. I want to fulfill them in a way that honors both my people and my heart." Before Jake could respond, the door chimed. A Zephyrian aide entered, bowing deeply. "Your Highness, the Emperor requests your immediate presence in the Grand Assembly Hall. The formal ceremony is about to begin." Zara nodded, her expression shifting back to royal composure. "Tell my father I'll be there shortly." As the aide departed, she turned back to Jake. "Come with me. There's something I need to do, and I need you to witness it." The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest space on Celestial Station Prime, capable of accommodating thousands of beings. As they entered, Jake saw that every seat was filled. Representatives from hundreds of species had gathered to witness humanity's admission to the Galactic Defense Alliance. But the buzz of conversation suggested that something else was happening. Emperor Thane of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the central podium, his imposing figure commanding attention. His silver hair was arranged in the traditional royal style, and his deep blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber's lights. Beside him stood the other members of the Galactic Council, including a notably subdued Ambassador Vex. "Citizens of the galaxy," Emperor Thane began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber, "we gather today not only to welcome humanity into the Galactic Defense Alliance, but to witness a moment that will reshape our understanding of what it means to be strong." Jake felt Princess Zara's hand briefly touch his arm as they took their places in the ceremonial seating area. Her amber eyes met his, and he saw a determination there that reminded him of her 10-year-old self, frightened but defiant in the face of danger. "Captain Jake Morrison," the Emperor continued, "your victory over Warlord Krex has proven that true strength comes not from size or superior weaponry, but from courage, intelligence, and the willingness to fight for what is right. Humanity has earned its place among the galaxy's defenders." The crowd erupted in applause, but Jake barely heard it. His attention was focused on Princess Zara, who had risen from her seat and was walking toward the podium. A murmur ran through the crowd as beings realized that something unplanned was about to happen. "Father," Princess Zara said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, "before we proceed with the ceremony, I have an announcement to make." Emperor Thane's expression tightened slightly. "Daughter, this is not the time for—" "This is exactly the time," Zara interrupted, her voice strong and clear. "What we witnessed in the arena of judgment was more than a combat victory. It was a demonstration of the values that should guide our galaxy: compassion, determination, and the courage to stand up for others, regardless of the personal cost." She turned to face the crowd, her presence commanding despite her relatively small stature. 20 years ago, a human saved my life. Not because he was ordered to, not because he sought reward, but because it was the right thing to do. Yesterday, that same human risked his life again, this time to secure his people's place in our galactic community. Jake felt his heart racing as he began to understand what she was about to do. "The Zephyrian High Council has pressured me to enter a political marriage," Zara continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "They believe that my association with humans has compromised my royal duties. They are wrong." The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even Ambassador Vex was leaning forward, his expression one of shocked fascination. "I hereby formally request permission to marry Captain Jake Morrison," Princess Zara announced, her amber eyes finding Jake's across the chamber. "Not as a political alliance, but as a union of two beings who have found in each other the best qualities of their respective species." The crowd erupted in shocked gasps and excited whispers. Emperor Thane's face had gone pale, while several Zephyrian nobles looked positively apoplectic. "Furthermore," Zara continued, raising her voice above the commotion, "I propose that this union serve as the foundation for a new kind of galactic cooperation. not one based on power or conquest, but on mutual respect and shared values. Jake stood up, his heart pounding. Every eye in the chamber was upon him as he made his way to the podium. When he reached Princess Zara's side, she looked at him with an expression that mixed hope, fear, and absolute determination. "Your Highness," Jake said, his voice carrying across the now silent chamber, "I accept your proposal. Not just for us, but for what we represent, a possibility that different species can find common ground, not through dominance, but through understanding." Emperor Thane looked at his daughter, then at Jake, then at the crowd of beings who were watching history unfold before their eyes. Finally, he smiled, expression that transformed his entire face. "The Zephyrian Empire recognizes this union," he announced, his voice booming across the chamber, "and proposes that it serve as the first step toward a new era of galactic cooperation." The chamber erupted in the loudest cheer in its history. Princess Zara threw her arms around Jake, tears streaming down her face. "I love you," she whispered in his ear. "I have since I was 10 years old." "I love you too," Jake replied, holding her close. "And I promise to spend the rest of my life proving worthy of that love." As the celebration continued around them, Jake reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. A simple act of kindness 20 years ago had grown into something that would reshape the galaxy. It was proof that sometimes the smallest actions could have the greatest consequences, and that love, like courage, could triumph over any obstacle. The princess had never forgotten the human who saved her, and now the entire galaxy would witness what that memory had wrought.